Today, we are diving into a philosophy that was born in a world that honestly sounds a whole lot like ours, a world just buzzing with conflicting certainties. We're talking about Greek skepticism, which is really a powerful tool for navigating all that chaos and finding a little bit of peace. So let's get into how this ancient art of doubt might just be the thing we need to make sense of our modern world. You ever feel like you're standing in a cafeteria line of ideas, and there are 100 different worldviews all shouting that they's got the one true answer? It can be absolutely bewildering. Well, the ancient Greeks, they felt that exact same way. You had the Platonists, the Aristotelians, the Stoics, the Epicureans, all of them competing for your attention. You see, for a lot of these Hellenistic thinkers, the goal wasn't really to win the argument. It was something much more personal. It was to achieve a state of inner calm, a mental tranquility. And one group, the skeptics, they had a pretty radical and, believe it or not, a surprisingly practical way to get there. So their quest wasn't for some absolute truth, but for a quiet mind. And this really frames skepticism not as some philosophy of constant arguing, but more like a practical, almost therapeutic response to all the philosophical noise of their time. The skeptic writer Sextus Empiricus defines his own philosophy in this really fascinating way. He doesn't call it a set of beliefs. He calls it an ability, like it's a practical skill you can learn. It's the ability to put different arguments up against each other, which leads you first to suspend your judgment. And then from there, you arrive at a state of calm, or as he puts it, quietude. So where did this all start? Well, the whole movement really traces back to one man, Pyrrho of Elis. And he didn't write some dense, complicated book. Instead, he boiled his entire philosophy down to three simple but really powerful questions that make up the very core of skepticism. Okay, so first, Pyrrho asks the question that basically started all of Greek philosophy. What is the true nature of things? His answer? We can't know, plain and simple. Our senses, while they're not exactly reliable, they just give us changing opinions. And our reason? Well, that's easily biased. For just about any argument you can make, it feels like there's an equally strong counterargument you could make right back. And that leads to this crucial concept called equivalence. It's the idea that the case for something has no more weight than the case against it. The arguments are just perfectly balanced, like on a scale, so they effectively cancel each other out. And if you can't prove one side is better, well, how can you claim to have certain knowledge? So if we can't truly know, Pyrrho's second question follows pretty naturally. Okay, then what should our attitude be? And his answer is radical. Suspend all judgment. The Greek term for this is epoche. Now, the point isn't to be lazy. It's to avoid dogmatism, that habit of declaring things as absolutely true without really considering other points of view. The skeptic would say it's way better to keep searching without making a claim than it is to make a claim you can't back up. And this is where we get to the payoff, Pyrrho's final question. What's the value in all this? The answer is the big prize of Hellenistic philosophy, peace of mind. This quietude, or ataraxia, is freedom from all the trouble and worry that comes from being so dogmatically attached to your beliefs. In a way, the skeptics, Stoics, and Epicureans were all kind of trying to climb the same mountain. They were just taking different paths to get to that summit of tranquility. But it's really important to get this. Skepticism wasn't just one single monolithic idea. Over time, it actually split into two major schools of thought, and the difference between them is pretty important. So on one hand, you've got the radical Pyrrhonian skeptics. I mean, these guys were so thorough that they wouldn't even say, I know that I don't know, because hey, that's a claim to knowledge right there. Then, on the other hand, you have the academic skeptics. They agreed, yeah, absolute certainty is impossible, but they argued we could still live our lives and make decisions based on what's probable. And this just brilliantly highlights the huge contribution of the academic skeptics, this idea of fallibilism. It's really just the humble recognition that any of our beliefs could be wrong. It allows you to have an opinion, to make a decision, to act in the world, all without the intellectual arrogance of claiming you have the final, unshakable truth. You can totally see the roots of the modern scientific method right here, right? This constant testing of ideas, always being open to the possibility that a better explanation might come along. Now, this kind of rigorous doubt wasn't just some vague feeling they had. Oh no, the skeptics developed a whole systematic set of arguments, a toolkit really, designed to challenge any dogmatic claim they came across. Let's take a quick look at some of their favorite tools. So leader skeptics, like a guy named Agrippa, organized these arguments into 5 tropes or modes of argument. They could point out that experts always disagree. They could show how any proof you have needs an earlier proof, and that proof needs a proof, and so on, back and back forever into an infinite regress with no solid starting point. Or they could show how a lot of arguments are just based on an unproven assumption. With this toolkit, they could pretty much systematically deconstruct any claim to absolute certainty. But the story doesn't end there in the ancient world. The really profound challenge that skepticism posed, it didn't just fade away. It actually ended up sparking some of the most important breakthroughs in the entire history of philosophy. Just look at this timeline. The skeptics' arguments were so powerful that they forced later thinkers to come up with a response. St. Augustine, arguing against them, famously said that even if he's wrong about everything else, he must exist in order to be wrong. Sound familiar? Well, over 1,000 years later, after skeptic texts were rediscovered, René Descartes used that exact same logic to build his famous line, "I think, therefore I am." So here's the crucial point. The entire project of modern philosophy, this huge search for a self-evident, unshakable foundation for all knowledge, was a direct response to the powerful challenge that the ancient Greek skeptics laid down. Their doubt created this intellectual vacuum that thinkers like Descartes felt absolutely compelled to fill. But maybe the most enduring legacy of skepticism isn't its complex arguments, but its simple, humble spirit. This quote from Oliver Cromwell just captures it perfectly. It's that intellectual humility to just recognize our own fallibility, a lesson that is every bit as valuable today as it was 2,000 years ago. And that kind of leaves us with a question for our own time, doesn't it? In an age that so often seems dominated by unshakable certainty and dogmatic absolutes, what is the real value of doubt? What could we possibly gain by just taking a moment, suspending our judgment, and simply considering that we might be wrong? Something to think about.